It was an ordinary day at Roosevelt High, but for Brianna, everything was about to change. She had always been an honor student, someone who kept her head down, worked hard, and stayed out of trouble. But that day, her entire world would be turned upside down by one man, a man who had the power to destroy everything she had worked for, simply because of the color of her skin. Officer Thompson was one of those cops who thought his badge gave him the right to act like the world owed him something. He'd been working security at Roosevelt for years, and it was no secret that he wasn't exactly friendly. He had a reputation for being overly aggressive and for picking on students who didn't fit his narrow idea of who belonged at the school. But that day, he went too far. Brianna was sitting in the lunchroom, her backpack resting beside her, when she noticed him approaching. He didn't walk like someone trying to keep the peace. No, he marched in, eyes scanning the room like he was hunting for trouble. Brianna felt her heart sink. She didn't even know why he was walking towards her, but she had learned to trust her instincts. Something about the way he looked at her made her nervous. She had seen this look before in the way some people judged her, and it wasn't one she could easily shake off. "Hey you," Officer Thompson barked, his voice cutting through the noise of the lunchroom. Brianna froze, her stomach dropping. It wasn't like she'd done anything wrong. She was just eating lunch, minding her business. But that didn't seem to matter. Without explanation, he told her to leave the cafeteria. When she asked why, his answer was simple and cold. "Just go. You don't belong here." Confused, Brianna stood up slowly, her mind racing. She had never been in trouble at school before. She had followed the rules. She had worked so hard to stay out of the drama. But now this man, this officer, was forcing her to leave, and no one was saying anything. The other students were watching, but no one stepped forward. They didn't know how to help her, or maybe they were too scared to. After all, this was Officer Thompson, the guy who had the power to make trouble for anyone who dared challenge him. As Brianna walked out of the cafeteria, the weight of humiliation settled on her shoulders. Her mind kept replaying the incident, trying to make sense of it. Why her? What did he mean by telling her she didn't belong there? But deep down, she knew exactly what it was. This was about race. She had seen it before in the way people treated her, dismissing her, underestimating her, or assuming she was something she wasn't. But this time, it was different. This time, Officer Thompson had gone too far. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have possibly known, was that karma had a funny way of working itself out. It wasn't going to happen right away, not that day, not even the next day. But sooner or later, the world would catch up with him. Because no matter how much power someone thought they had, no matter how many people they tried to control, there was always a balance. And Brianna wasn't the type to stay down. As the school bell rang and the day came to a close, Brianna couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. She didn't know what, but she knew it wasn't over. She wasn't going to let this man's actions define her, and more importantly, she wasn't going to let him get away with it. Officer Thompson may have thought he had all the control, but that's where he was wrong. The next day, Brianna's phone buzzed with a message that was about to change everything. But what was it? Who had sent it? And how was it connected to the day before? She didn't know yet, but the events that were about to unfold would send shockwaves through the entire school, and Officer Thompson would be the last to see it coming. The phone buzzed again, pulling Brianna from her thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number, the screen lighting up with a single sentence. "I know what happened yesterday." Her heart skipped a beat. Who was this? She hadn't told anyone about what happened with Officer Thompson, at least not yet. She'd been too humiliated to speak about it, too hurt by the way the situation had unfolded. The feeling of being singled out, of being forced to leave without reason, without a fair explanation, still stung. But now someone else knew. Brianna hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. Should she reply? Should she even open the message? Part of her felt like she should just ignore it, pretend like it was nothing. But curiosity won out. She swiped the message open, and a chill ran through her when she saw the next line. "You don't have to take this. I'll help you." Help? What was this person offering? Brianna's mind raced. She thought about all the students who had witnessed what happened the day before. Surely someone else saw it, but no one had spoken up. Was this person one of them? Someone who had been watching? Someone who understood the injustice she had just experienced? But there was still a nagging feeling in her gut. What if this was some kind of prank? What if the message was a setup to make her look crazy, to make her seem like she was overreacting? She didn't want to give anyone a reason to make fun of her, not after everything that had already happened. With trembling hands, she typed a response. "Who are you?" The phone buzzed again almost immediately. "Let's just say I've got some pull. You don't have to do this alone." The message was vague, but something about it felt genuine. Brianna couldn't shake the feeling that this person knew exactly what had happened, and that they might be able to help her. She thought about Officer Thompson, the way he had looked at her, his words cold and dismissive. "You don't belong here." It was a line that replayed in her mind over and over. It was the kind of thing she'd seen too many times before. The discrimination, the way people like Officer Thompson thought they had the right to define her, to tell her where she fit in this world. Brianna wasn't the type to let it slide, but she wasn't sure where to turn either. What could she even do about it? She wasn't some troublemaker. She wasn't looking for a fight. All she wanted was to finish school, to make her parents proud, and to get into college. That's it. But now she found herself questioning everything. Her place in the school, her safety, even her future. As she sat there, staring at the screen, another message popped up. This time, it was a video link. Brianna stared at it for a moment, hesitating. Should she open it? What was it? Her curiosity finally got the best of her, and she tapped on the link. The video buffered for a few seconds before it loaded. At first, Brianna didn't recognize what she was seeing. It was a shaky recording of a hallway at Roosevelt High, what looked like a hidden camera from a distance. She could see a group of students gathered, some talking and others just hanging out between classes. The camera angle shifted, and that's when Brianna saw him, Officer Thompson. He was walking down the hallway, his eyes scanning the students as they moved around him. Then the camera zoomed in on a particular scene, and Brianna's stomach twisted. It was her. She recognized herself immediately, sitting at her locker, talking to a friend. Her face was visible in the video for only a brief second, but it was enough. And then Officer Thompson appeared, walking right up to her as if he were planning something. The video didn't capture the exact conversation, but Brianna could see the way Thompson's eyes hardened when he spoke to her. His posture was stiff, commanding. It hit her then. This wasn't just about a random encounter. This was something bigger. It was a pattern. She'd seen Officer Thompson do this before, picking on students who seemed different, students who didn't meet his standards. Brianna wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. The video ended with a message written across the screen. "Don't let him get away with it." Brianna's mind was spinning. Who had taken that video? Who was behind all of this? She had no answers, only more questions. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. She glanced at the time on her phone. School would be over soon, and she would have to go home. But as she started to pack up her things, a sudden realization hit her. She hadn't heard the last of Officer Thompson. The next day, Brianna found herself walking through the school halls with a heavy heart. The weight of everything that had happened felt even more real now that she knew there was someone out there, watching, waiting. But what did they want from her? Why had they reached out? As she passed the cafeteria, she saw Officer Thompson standing by the entrance. He was talking to a group of students, laughing as if nothing had happened, as if his actions from the day before had been justified. Brianna's blood began to boil. How dare he? How could he just walk around, acting like everything was normal, after what he'd done to her? She looked away, not wanting to give him the satisfaction of seeing her upset. But deep down she knew that something had to be done. She couldn't let him keep walking around like he had all the power. He had to be held accountable for his actions. She didn't know how, but she would find a way. Brianna wasn't going to let this go. As she walked to her next class, the weight of her decision settled over her. She knew that if she went through with it, things would change forever. She couldn't back down now, not after everything she'd already been through. But the question was, how far was she willing to go to make things right? Brianna didn't know yet, but one thing was certain. Officer Thompson's time was running out. The days that followed felt like a blur for Brianna. She woke up each morning with a heavy weight on her chest, the knowledge of what she had to do gnawing at her thoughts. She couldn't shake the memory of Officer Thompson's words, his cold, dismissive tone. And every time she saw him, walking down the halls like nothing had happened, it made her blood boil. The more she thought about it, the more certain she became she had to take action. But how? At school, things had only gotten worse. Brianna tried to keep her head down, focus on her studies, but it wasn't easy. Everywhere she went, she could feel eyes on her. Some students whispered as she passed by, and others looked at her with pity in their eyes, as if they knew what had happened and didn't know how to help. But no one spoke up. No one did anything. It was as if they were all afraid of getting caught up in whatever drama surrounded Officer Thompson. She had always known that her school had its issues. Students who didn't get along, cliques, rivalries. But this felt different. This was about power. This was about control. And Brianna was determined not to let Officer Thompson have it. Meanwhile, the mysterious person who had contacted her kept sending messages. They were cryptic, vague, but somehow comforting. "You're not alone in this," one message read. Another said, "If you need help, I know people who can make a difference." Brianna had no idea who this person was, but part of her felt relieved knowing that someone was on her side. She wasn't sure what kind of help they could offer, but at least she wasn't fighting this battle alone. But as the days went on, the messages grew more intense. "It's time to take a stand," one text read. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone he's hurt." Brianna's mind raced. Who else had Officer Thompson targeted? She couldn't be the only one. She remembered the whispers around school, the rumors of students who had been treated unfairly, pushed around or singled out by the officer. Maybe they had their own stories to tell, their own battles to fight. But how could she reach them? How could she get them to speak up when so many had stayed silent? One afternoon, as Brianna sat in the library, her phone buzzed again. The message was brief, but it made her heart race. "Meet me at the old gym after school. I have information you need to hear." Brianna stared at the screen for a long moment, her heart thudding in her chest. She didn't know if she should trust this person, but something in her gut told her that she had no choice. If she was going to confront Officer Thompson, she needed more than just her word. She needed evidence. She needed the truth. After school, Brianna found herself standing in front of the old gym, a place that had been abandoned for years, long since forgotten by most of the school. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old wood. She hesitated for a moment, then pushed open the door. The dim light from the windows illuminated the empty space, but there was no sign of anyone. Suddenly, a voice from the shadows spoke. "You came." Brianna jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. A figure stepped out from behind a stack of gym equipment, and Brianna's eyes widened. It was a girl, maybe a few years older than Brianna, with dark hair tied back in a ponytail and a serious expression on her face. She didn't look like she was from Brianna's school, and she didn't look like the kind of person who'd normally hang out in a place like this. "Who are you?" Brianna asked, her voice worried. The girl gave her a tight smile. "I'm someone who's been watching Officer Thompson for a long time. I know what he's done, and I know how he's gotten away with it." Brianna's breath caught in her throat. You know about him?" "Of course," the girl replied. "He's been getting away with this for years. Bullying, intimidation, even stealing from students. No one's ever had the courage to speak out, though, until now." Brianna swallowed hard. "But why me? Why contact me?" The girl's expression softened. "Because you're the one who can make a difference. You're the one who can stand up to him. People trust you, Brianna. You're smart, you're strong, and you're not afraid to fight for what's right." Brianna's mind was spinning. "But how? How can I fight him? He has so much power. He's a cop. Everyone's too scared to speak up." The girl stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Not everyone. I've been collecting evidence. Pictures, videos, statements. There are more of us who've seen what he's done, and we've got enough to take him down. But we need you to help us. You're the key. The truth is stronger than any badge." Brianna felt a chill run down her spine. This was bigger than she had imagined. Officer Thompson wasn't just some bad cop. He was a man who had been using his position to harm students for years, and now there was a chance, just a chance, that they could finally bring him down. But it wasn't going to be easy. The girl handed Brianna a folder filled with photographs and documents. Brianna glanced at the top photo. It was Officer Thompson, caught in a dark alley behind the school, talking to a student. The look on the student's face was one of fear, and Brianna's heart sank. This was just one of many pictures. Each one told a story of abuse, intimidation, and control. "I can't do this alone," Brianna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to stop him. I want to make sure no one else has to go through what I did." The girl nodded. "You won't be alone. We're in this together, but you need to be careful. He's dangerous. If he finds out we're coming for him, he won't hesitate to destroy us." Brianna took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling over her. She didn't know where this would lead or how it would end, but one thing was clear: the battle was just beginning. The more she learned, the more she realized how deep this went, how many people had been affected by Officer Thompson's abuse of power, and the more determined she became to see it through to the end. As she left the old gym, the folder tucked tightly under her arm, Brianna couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a dangerous path. But there was no turning back now. The truth had to come out, and Officer Thompson's reign of fear was about to come to an end. Brianna couldn't sleep that night. The folder of evidence was still sitting on her desk, and every time she closed her eyes, images of Officer Thompson's smug face kept flashing in her mind. She could almost hear his voice, the cruel, dismissive tone he had used with her, telling her she didn't belong. It haunted her. Those words, that moment. She had tried to push it out of her mind, but now, with everything unfolding, she couldn't escape it. The stakes were higher than ever. She knew what she had to do next. She had to get the truth out, but it wasn't going to be easy. The more she thought about it, the more the weight of her decision pressed down on her chest. Who could she trust? Could she even trust the mysterious girl who had shown her the evidence? What if this was all just part of some elaborate plan to make her a target? What if things went wrong? What if she couldn't stop Officer Thompson? The phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her spiral of doubt. Brianna stared at the screen, her heart racing as she saw the new message from the unknown number. We're almost ready. Meet at the park tomorrow at 5 p.m. Bring everything. We go public then. She froze. It was happening. The girl was right. They were about to go after Officer Thompson, fully and publicly, and it all depended on her. The evidence, the photos, the videos, they were powerful. But in the wrong hands, they could be dangerous. Brianna couldn't afford to make a mistake. She couldn't back down now. The next day, she found herself pacing the house, the folder heavy in her hands. Her parents were at work, and her brother was out with friends. It was the perfect time to act, but the fear of what could happen next made her hesitate. Her thoughts circled in a never-ending loop. What if she wasn't ready? What if this changed everything? By the time 4:30 p.m. rolled around, Brianna couldn't sit still. She grabbed her jacket and headed out the door, her heart pounding in her chest. The park was only a few blocks away, but the walk felt like it lasted hours. Each step felt heavier than the last as she approached the meeting spot. The park was eerily quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. Brianna glanced around nervously, but the girl wasn't there yet. She checked her phone again. No new messages. Was she supposed to be early? Was this a trap? She pushed the thoughts away. She had come this far. She couldn't stop now. Then, a figure emerged from behind a large oak tree. Brianna's breath caught in her throat. It was the girl from the gym. She stepped forward, her face serious, her eyes scanned the surroundings like she was checking for threats. "You made it," the girl said, her voice low. "We don't have much time. They'll notice if we're out here too long." Brianna nodded, swallowing her nerves. I brought everything," she said, holding up the folder. "Good," the girl replied. She reached for the folder, her fingers brushing Brianna's. "We need to move quickly. I have contacts who can help us get this out, but we need to be smart. Officer Thompson is too powerful for us to take on directly, not yet." Brianna could feel the weight of the folder in her hands. The information it held almost too much to bear. It wasn't just her life that was at stake anymore. It was everyone who had been hurt by Officer Thompson's abuse. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the countless other students who had been silent for far too long. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. Brianna's heart skipped a beat. She looked up to see a group of people walking towards them, their faces hidden in the shadows. Her throat went dry. Were they the people the girl had been talking about? Were they here to help, or were they bringing trouble? "Stay calm," the girl whispered, sensing Brianna's unease. "These are the right people. Just follow my lead." The group stopped in front of them, and Brianna noticed that some of the faces were familiar. There was Jake, a senior who had been one of the students Officer Thompson had once singled out for no reason at all. And there was Sarah, a quiet girl who had been one of the first to speak up when rumors of Officer Thompson's corruption began to spread. "I'm glad you're all here," the girl said, her voice firm but calm. "We got one shot at this. No turning back now." The tension in the air was palpable as everyone nodded in agreement. Brianna didn't know who to trust completely, but she couldn't back down. She handed the folder to the girl, her stomach a knot of nerves. "What now?" "Now we expose him," the girl said with a determined look. "The evidence is enough to prove that Officer Thompson has been abusing his position. We have videos, statements, and photos that will hold up in court. But we need to get this out to the right people fast. The media. We have to make sure they can't sweep this under the rug." Brianna nodded, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She could feel the adrenaline surging through her veins. This was it, the final step. But just as the girl began to make a call, a loud, unmistakable sound echoed across the park. The screech of tires. Brianna's heart froze as she saw a black car roll up to the curb. Officer Thompson stepped out, his face hard and cold, his eyes scanning the park like a predator. He hadn't seen them yet, but Brianna knew he was looking for something. Looking for them. "Go," the girl hissed. "We're out of time." The group scattered, vanishing into the shadows of the park. Brianna's pulse raced as she turned to run, but she couldn't help glancing back. Officer Thompson was getting closer, his heavy footsteps loud in the otherwise quiet park. She felt her legs move faster, pushing herself harder. She couldn't let him stop them now. With every step, Brianna knew the danger was getting closer. If Officer Thompson caught them, it was over, but she couldn't stop running. Not now. Not when they were so close to bringing him down. The next few moments felt like they were happening in slow motion. Brianna's breath came in ragged gasps as she ducked into a side alley, heart pounding. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change everything. Officer Thompson was closing in, but they had one chance to take him down. And with that thought, the weight of everything she'd fought for hung heavily on her shoulders. The final confrontation was coming. It was only a matter of time before it all came to a head. Brianna's legs burned as she sprinted down the alley, the sound of Officer Thompson's footsteps getting louder with each passing second. Her breath came in sharp, panicked gasps, her mind racing with thoughts of how to get away. Every instinct told her to keep running, to put as much distance between herself and the danger as possible, but the reality of the situation was sinking in. They were cornered. She knew they couldn't outrun him forever. She glanced over her shoulder just in time to see the black car pulling up to the entrance of the alley. The car door slammed open, and Officer Thompson stepped out, his face a grim mask of fury. He was too close. Brianna's heart pounded in her chest as she pushed herself to run faster, the alley twisting and turning like a maze. She had to lose him, but deep down she knew that escape wasn't the only thing at stake. If she didn't act soon, the whole plan would fall apart. She was so focused on finding an escape route that she didn't see the figure that stepped out from behind a dumpster ahead of her. She slammed into them, stumbling back, her heart leaping into her throat. "Shay," a voice hissed, pulling her into the shadows. Brianna's eyes widened in shock as she saw who had grabbed her. It was the girl from the gym, the one who had been helping her, the one who had seemed so determined. But now there was something different about her. The girl's expression was no longer calm and collected. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her hands trembled as she held Brianna against the wall. "They're onto us," the girl whispered urgently. "You need to get out of here. It's not safe. They're not just after you, they're after all of us." Brianna's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's going on?" The girl's face darkened. "It's a setup. This whole thing. Officer Thompson, he's not just some corrupt cop. He's not working alone. There's someone bigger behind this. Someone who doesn't want the truth to come out." Brianna froze, her mind struggling to catch up. "What are you talking about? Who else is involved?" The girl hesitated, looking over her shoulder to make sure they were still safe. "I was contacted by someone on the inside. Someone who's been trying to expose what Officer Thompson has been doing. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, is that this goes way higher up than just a few bad cops. Thompson's just the tip of the iceberg. The people who really run things, they'll do anything to keep their secrets safe." Brianna felt a chill run down her spine. She had thought she was fighting for justice, for something that could make a real difference. But now she realized she was standing on the edge of something far darker than she ever could have imagined. "But why involve me?" Brianna whispered. "I'm just a student. I don't know anything about this world. Why me?" The girl's expression softened, and she placed her hand on Brianna's shoulder. "Because you're the spark we need. You're the one who can make it all come to light. But it's dangerous, Brianna. The people who are behind this, they'll do anything to stop you. And I mean anything." A loud crash echoed from the other end of the alley, followed by shouts. Officer Thompson and his team were getting closer. Brianna's mind raced, and the fear in her chest intensified. She had been so close. They had all been so close to bringing the truth out, but now it felt like the walls were closing in around them. "Go," the girl urged, pushing Brianna toward the other end of the alley. "Get to the back entrance of the school. There's a way out there. I'll distract them." Brianna didn't hesitate. She ran, her heart thundering in her chest, the sound of pursuit growing louder behind her. She had to make it to safety, had to figure out what was going on, who was behind all of this. The stakes had just been raised so much higher than she had ever imagined. This wasn't just about a corrupt cop anymore. It was about a powerful system that would stop at nothing to protect its secrets. She darted through the side streets, the city around her blurring as she tried to stay ahead of the danger. The back entrance of the school loomed ahead, but something felt off. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She glanced over her shoulder, expecting to see the girl following her, but there was no sign of her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, and Brianna fumbled to pull it out. Her hands were shaking as she read the new message. "It's a trap. They know about the evidence. Don't trust anyone." Her stomach dropped. Who had sent this message? Was it the girl? Was it someone trying to help? Or was it someone trying to trick her? She didn't know who to trust anymore. With her heart pounding in her chest, Brianna reached the back entrance and ducked inside, finding herself in a dark hallway. She had to get out of there before she was caught. She checked the hallway for any signs of movement, but it was eerily silent. That's when she heard it. A faint click, like a door being shut quietly. Brianna froze. The footsteps were too close. Someone was in the building with her. She pressed her back against the wall, holding her breath, waiting. Her mind raced as she tried to figure out where she could go, but the walls seemed to close in tighter. Then a voice broke the silence. Brianna, Officer Thompson's voice echoed through the dark hallway. "I know you're here. You can't run forever." Brianna's pulse spiked. She knew she had to act fast, but her body refused to move. It wasn't just Officer Thompson she had to worry about anymore. There were others. More people, more dangerous people, and she was running out of time. Every instinct told her to run, but something inside of her made her stop. She needed answers. She needed to know who was pulling the strings. Was this all really about Officer Thompson? Or had she walked into something far worse? And just as that thought crossed her mind, the hallway light flickered, and the door at the end of the corridor creaked open slowly. The last thing Brianna saw before everything went dark was a shadowy figure stepping out from the room. Someone she never expected to see. It was the girl from the park. But this time, her expression wasn't one of fear. It was one of cold determination. "Brianna, it's time to finish what we started," she said, her voice now sharper than ever before. And with that, everything shifted.